What's up everybody, Super Dorks fan here for another car review. This is of course the 2016 Buick Cascada. Huge thanks to Buick for providing me with this very nice Cascada here to review for you guys today. So about the Cascada, well, to those of you in Europe, this will look like an Opel or Vauxhall, and that is because this is heavily based upon those vehicles and shares many of the same looks here. You do have the Buick grille and a few of the nice Buick accents here and there, and I think overall it's a really nice looking vehicle, especially with the top down here and this silver bluish gray color. It's just really, I think, pretty striking actually, kind of elegant and just a really classy looking vehicle, and I love the way it looks from just about every angle. In the back there you have a very nice chrome piece with the prominent Buick badge there, and overall I think it's just it's nicely understated yet still very attractive looking vehicle. Whereas for the interior of the Buick Cascada, well, it's really nice. Anyway, first things first, sitting down in these seats, very nicely bolstered. I mean, really hefty bolstering here on these seats. You got great thigh support that really hugs you in nicely, and torso support's pretty good as well. They're very nicely perforated. I like the cool design here with the perforation and the white stitching, and they're very nice seats. They're a little bit on the firm side, which you'll either probably love or hate, but they're fine. You know, they still feel about the same as most other seats, but I will say that the Camaro leather seats in the new 2016 Camaros is a much softer seat than these are, just for comparison's sake. But like I said, I absolutely love the bolstering and they feel really great. Next is the steering wheel in the Buick, which is really beefy. Buick loves putting these really thick rimmed wheels in their vehicles, and I honestly love it. I think it's you know, about the same thickness as any other like BMW wheel, for example. Really nice beefy wheel. You got a good 9.3 grip here, nice little 10 and 2 notches, and overall the same basic wheel you'll see in things like, you know, the Regal GS, stuff like that. It's not flat bottom, but you know, just a nice round wheel. Next is the gauges in the Cascada, which are decent. They're not the most amazing. I do love the font of them. You know, they're attractive looking gauges, but unfortunately you do have an old school you know, single color display there in the middle. It's not full color like all the other stuff in you know, the modern, you know, 2015 2016 GM vehicles and on, which again could be a result of you know, bringing the car over from overseas. I'm not totally sure, but you know, it still is your basic kind of screen that you would get in like a 5th gen Camaro, stuff like that. Very similar kind of display in there, and works just fine, you know, for giving you your basic information, just not very fancy or, you know, as slick as stuff like the Buick Regal GS with its full color you know, screen there for the gauges and stuff like that. But otherwise, you know, the gauges are very easy to read. The fuel gauge, it is a little bit deeply hooded, so if you're not sitting up really high, it's a little hard to see exactly where you're at sometimes with the fuel, but otherwise, like I said, they're really nice and attractive looking gauges. Coming over to the center of the dashboard, it's an interesting story here. So anyway, first thing up top here, you have a touchscreen head unit that is again outdated. Everything in this car feels a little bit outdated. I mean, I guess, you know, that again, that's part of just it being brought over. It's not the most cutting edge stuff that you've seen from GM, but you do have a nice, still full color touchscreen display here that works exactly like the, you know, outstanding, more modern 8-inch Chevrolet MyLink and Buick IntelliLink systems here. You know, it's still very responsive and quick. It's just not quite as slick looking, not as high resolution, and the screen isn't quite as large, but it still gets the job done just fine. It is kind of strangely positioned though, where it's set back there once again, so if you're not sitting all the way up, you kind of have a hard time seeing the very bottom of the screen there a little bit, and so just a little strange. And that whole thought continues down to all these sea of buttons that you have here, an enormous sea of buttons. You have your basic buttons here on the left for navigating the screen as well. You have a volume knob, which is always nice to see, and then, you know, you have all these other audio control buttons. It's a little bit overboard, and you have this spin wheel, which will help you to navigate. If you don't want to use the touchscreen, you can use that, which is a little bit of a less reach, so that's nice to have. But you have this like D-pad thing that I haven't seen it do anything. I press it and it doesn't do anything, so I'm not sure what that's there for exactly, but that's there to add to the clutter of buttons, unfortunately. Coming down to the climate controls here, you do have heated seats and and a heated steering wheel, which is nice to have. But again, you know, a good amount of buttons here. They're not quite as overwhelming as the radio controls, but still, just this whole thing is just one giant sea of buttons, and it does not help with you know, whenever you're trying to drive and find the button that you want to look for. It's a little bit tricky. So not the greatest design there, unfortunately. But coming down to the bottom here, underneath the climate controls, you'll find a USB jack, a power outlet, and also an auxiliary jack. As far as storage space in the Buick Cascada here, it's pretty good. So first, in the door, you have a map pocket slash bottle holder, and it's a good size there, so you can fit a good amount of things in there, so nice to have that. Coming over to the center here, underneath the USB and auxiliary jacks and stuff like that, you have a pretty deep cubby as well that's really handy for holding your sunglasses and things like that, and so nice to have that. Speaking of sunglasses, you do have another little holder here to the left of the steering wheel, which is more so set up for change and things like that. Don't think you'd be able to fit a full-size pair of sunglasses in there, but nice to have that little additional storage as well. You have your two cup holders, which are a great size and will fit American-sized drinks just fine. And then you have the center armrest, which is nicely padded and covered in leather here. And you open that up, and it's a little bit of a smaller cubby, but it's still nice and deep, and you know, you can fit a good amount of things in there. But there is no other plug-ins or jacks or anything. It's just a storage space, which is still great. If you do want a little bit more storage, there are also these little tiny cubbies right attached to the seat, which is a little bit different. And then you also have behind the center armrest here for the backseat occupants another power outlet, and then you also have a little tray down there as well. Backseat space in the Cascada is really great as well. It's really nice how the front seats here do slide up automatically and resume their position to help, you know, people get in and out of the back seat, which is really nice. But there's plenty of space back there. I'm 5'9", me sitting behind myself. I still have about an inch or two of legroom there to spare, and even with the top up, I have about an inch or two of headroom still to spare. So, you know, I would say anyone under 6 feet tall should be able to fit back there pretty well. And yeah, so it's actually a pretty nice back seat and a really great four-seater. Trunk space in the Cascada, like most convertibles, completely depends on whether or not you have the top up or down. So, you know, with the top down, it is a little bit limited because, you know, you have that big divider thing there to, you know, give enough space for the convertible top. And so, you know, you can fit maybe a small carry-on kind of thing there in the front. There is still space underneath that divider, so you can slide some, you know, thinner items underneath there, but certainly not a suitcase or golf clubs or anything like that. But with the roof up, you can push that whole thing back, and then you have a pretty nice sized trunk there that, you know, you'd be able to fit probably a pair of suitcases without a problem. So, you know, a pretty nicely sized trunk. So if you absolutely have to have a ton of stuff and a lot of space, you can put the top up. But with the top down, it still is a usable trunk, which is nice. All right, so start up and go for a drive. The Buicks here have a nice little switchblade key that you hit the button and flips right up. Anyway, you just slip that into the key slot here. It starts right up. All right, so setting off in the 2016 Buick Cascada here. So, first thing you notice is it's obviously very nice to drive without the top on here. Very airy feeling, of course. And so yeah, just, you know, cruising around here on this park road. Nice and smooth, you know, comfortable ride for the most part. You know, good visibility, by the way. You can see forward very well. The dashboard is kind of long, but the hood drops down nicely, so you don't have to worry about looking over a hood. Side visibility is very good, of course. With the top up now, it's not quite as great, and you do have, you know, your typical kind of blind spots, but because it's so far back there, you can actually see out pretty well. The only problem is with the roof up, the rear visibility is awful. You have a tiny little window that's very hard to see out of, honestly. But of course, the solution is just to drive the top down. Alrighty, so let's turn onto this back road here and see how it does. And here we go. Okay, so it gets up to speed pretty good here. So the Buick Cascada has a 1.6 liter turbocharged engine that does 200 horsepower and 207 pound-feet of torque, although with an overboost function it can get 221 pound-feet of torque on demand. It does do a pretty good job of kicking down this 6-speed automatic transmission too, to give you the power that you want, so that, you know, it doesn't have any lag really. It keeps it in the middle of the power band for the most part. One thing you can probably already hear though is with this roof down, if you don't have anyone in this passenger seat buckled up, that passenger seat belt will just knock consistently on that plastic over there, which is a little bit annoying. I don't know if there's any kind of solution you can have for that, but whenever the wind hits it just right, it likes to flap around in the wind, which is a little bit annoying. 0 to 60 time for the Cascada is 8.6 seconds, which I think is partially because this vehicle is pretty heavy. For 200 horsepower is not that bad of a figure, but whenever it's hauling around nearly 4,000 pounds at 3950, it's going to make it a little bit slower. And so this is not the convertible to buy if you're looking for a sports car or anything enthusiast related, honestly. Although it does feel sporty, there's a lot of other stuff that's faster, and you can even stay within the GM brand and get a Camaro, which is cheaper and faster as well. So this is just for those that want a cruiser, and I think in daily driving, kind of normal driving activities, this is totally fine and the power will be plentiful. Alright, so coming up to some very tight corners here, and let's see how it takes the corners. So brakes feel really good and beefy actually, and it's holding its own here. It's actually pretty flat, and these are some pretty tight corners, and it's taking them really in a poised and controlled fashion. I'm pretty impressed with how it's handling here. Steering weight is really perfect, honestly. Really nice and sporty. Good amount of weight to it, but not overbearing. And it's a little bit on the numb side. There's not a ton of feeling through the wheel, but like I said, it does have good weight, which is always nice. I mean, yes, it is front-wheel drive, but it does a really good job of still feeling sporty and controlled, but still sharp. It's not really understeering too badly, and I doubt most owners are going to push them more than this anyway, so I think most people will be perfectly happy with the way this handles. And it is a little bit of a firmer ride. The more that I've been driving here, it's not uncomfortable by any means, but it certainly reminds me a lot of the Regal GS in the way that it feels. I think it's set up very similarly probably, and that's a good thing though, because the Regal GS I thought handled pretty well, although it was a little bit on the firm side, and I can see this being similar in that way, but I mean it gives it a very sporty feeling, which is very nice. Yeah, let's do another little acceleration here, because why not? Yeah, a little bit of torque steer, not much though, because like I said, the steering doesn't give you a ton of feeling, so you don't get that torque steer transmitted through the wheel very much. As far as convertibles go too, at regular driving speeds here, it's actually pretty quiet. The wind isn't beating you up really, keeps you nicely insulated, while this still does stop far enough back that you can still get an open air experience. It doesn't feel like you're driving a Targa or something. It does feel like a fully open top experience, which is always nice. I gotta say though, I was worried the transmission doesn't really have a sport mode or anything like that. You do have the slapstick down here, so you can manually shift it through the actual shifter here, but it's doing a really good job of just leaving it in drive, and I'm braking for corners and it's downshifting, and it gets me right on the power whenever I'm going right over to the gas, and it's very responsive and sporty in the way that it's set up. Overall, it's just a really nice thing to drive on back roads, honestly, and so yeah, pretty nice vehicle here so far, but thanks to Buick, I'll have this vehicle for an entire week, so I'm going to drive it around some more here, and I'll come back and give you some updated impressions. Alright, so I've been driving the 2016 Buick Cascada here for almost a week now, and it's really grown on me. When I first started driving it about a week ago, it was a little iffy just because the dashboard here is very long, and it made for some awkward proportions whenever you were driving it. It felt bigger than it actually was, and over the week here though, I've kind of gotten used to that. It's not as big of a deal as it was before, and I've actually really started to enjoy driving it. It's really nice, especially whenever you can actually put the roof down, which we've had a couple of nice days here. Fortunately, I was able to enjoy it, and but it has rained off and on as well, so this top is really nice because you can put it up and down in 17 seconds, and you can do it at speed of up to 31 miles per hour, so it's nice. You don't have to stop and pull over. You can just slow down, or when you're rolling up to a red light, hurry up and do it, and it's fast enough you can get it done in a red light, or while you're coasting up to one and driving away. Yeah, it's just a nice thing to drive. I just I was really impressed still with the handling. It's much better than I was expecting it to be. It's still front-wheel drive, and it's still not the most powerful thing out there, and there is some stiff competition. Especially at the price that this one is at. This one, as tested, is $37,385, and the only option package you can really get on these is the safety package, which this one has plus the special paint color. But the safety package gives you the lane warning assist, so help you stay in your lane, and it also has the parking sensors, and it'll also monitor the traffic in front of you here, and will stop autonomously if need be. So that's nice to have, but it's like $3,000 for that option package, and honestly, you still don't even have blind spot monitoring with that, by the way. So that's not even an option on these. So, and honestly, that would be the most valuable thing to me out of this whole package, because a backup camera is standard, so you don't have to pay for that or anything. So, personally, I would just go for the base model, which is right around $34,000. This makes a whole lot more sense at $34,000, I think, than it does at $37,000. Once you get up into $37,000, you could have yourself a Camaro convertible, and you could have a nice one, a 2LT with the heated and cooled leather seats and more power, even with the standard turbo 4-cylinder in the Camaro. It's 272 horsepower versus the 200 even in this vehicle. So it's a much quicker car. I think the Camaro handles better. It's lighter. It's a more, fun car to drive because it's rear-wheel drive and all that kind of stuff. So that would be my choice if I was spending $37,000. But if this undercuts it, and for $34,000 you still get leather seats and the nicer screen, all that kind of stuff. Whenever otherwise, in a base Camaro convertible, you'd have cloth seats for the same price. I can see how that can be a little bit of an advantage. And of course, not everyone wants rear-wheel drive or muscle car looks. And so this is, for those that want something milder, that want something, that's front-wheel drive, if you maybe live in a snowy place and that works better for you, stuff like that, I can see how this makes sense in those instances. So, and it's a nice thing, it gets pretty good fuel economy too. It's rated at 20 in the city and 27 on the highway. In my 100 or so odd miles that I drove this, I averaged 20.2, and I was driving mostly in the city, so that's why I got a mostly city figure. But I think that if you were to do a more even mix of city and highway, you would be able to get better fuel economy and bring that average up. But even still, for a heavy, like I said, almost 4,000 pounds in this convertible, to still be getting that kind of fuel economy, I think is pretty good still. So but it's nice. The stereo system is pretty good quality. But yeah, that's it as far as all my thoughts on the Buick Cascada here. It's a nice, like I said, a nice option. It never hurts to have more options. Of course, people like myself that are enthusiasts will of course go for the rear-wheel drive muscle car convertibles. But this is nice, for those that maybe don't want, like a Beetle convertible or something like that, want something a little more elegant and luxurious. This is a really nice option. So anyway, let me know your thoughts on the Cascada, and thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next week. Take care.